doing any type of ceramic tile work, it's inevitable that you will have to cut and trim some tiles to fit around holes and openings, along edges and borders, or to complete part of a design. With the right tools, cutting ceramic tile is fairly simple. In this section, we'll show you how to cut straight pieces using the two common tile cutting tools, a snap cutter and a wet saw. Snap cutters are great for making straight cuts. They hold the tile in place, allow you to score at the cut line, and then snap the tile in two. If you don't want to buy one, they can be rented from Home Depot. To make a cut, measure and mark the cutting line on the tile. To ensure you end up with a true right angle, use a combination square as your straight edge when drawing the line. Set the tile in the cutter and align it so the cutting wheel rests directly on top of the cut line. Move the wheel away from you to the far edge of the tile. Supporting the tile to keep it level, lower the cutting wheel onto the edge of the tile and pull it toward you. Apply light pressure on the handle. Pressing too hard can cause the tile to crack and break. If the tile is more than 1/4 inch thick, you may have to repeat the process to score the tile deep enough. Lift the cutting wheel and slide the handle to the center of the tile. Lower the pressing T and strike the handle of the cutter quickly to snap the tile along the scoring line. That's all there is to it. If you'll be doing lots of cutting, a wet saw makes the job fast and easy. They're called wet saws because they use water to keep the blade and the tile cool. It also helps reduce the amount of dust thrown out by the saw. Most wet saws have a sliding table that feeds the tile into the overhead blade. Always wear safety glasses and use ear protection when you use a wet saw. Since the saw creates a lot of water splatter, an apron is a good idea too. And anytime you're making adjustments to a wet saw, unplug the unit. As with the snap cutter, measure and mark the cutting line on the tile using a combination square as your straight edge. To help keep your hands away from the blade during the cut, set the fence on the saw so the widest part of the tile is between the blade and the fence. Back the tile away from the blade and turn on the saw. Holding the tile with both hands, feed it along the fence and toward the blade. Move the tile slowly to avoid overheating and cracking. Let the saw do the work and keep your hands away from the blade. When you get to the end of the tile, turn off the saw and then remove the tile. Nearly every tiling job requires trimming tiles to fit around curves and obstructions. With the right tools and some practice, you can learn to cut curves, notches, and holes. In this section, we'll show you how. To make a curved cut on a wet saw, mark the outline of the cut on the tile with a grease pencil. Wearing safety glasses and using ear protection, make a series of straight, parallel cuts from the edge of the tile to the inside edge of the curve. The cut should be about 1/4 inch apart. The more cuts you make, the smoother and more accurate your curve will be. Turn off the saw when you're done. Use tile nippers to remove the thin slivers. They should snap off easily. Finally, use the saw to smooth any jagged edges around the cutout by applying sideways pressure on the tip of the blade. You can also make curve cuts with tile nippers. This handy tool nibbles off small bits of the tile. Firmly hold the tile glazed side up and starting at one end of the curve, use the nippers to bite into the tile. Gradually widen the cut by nibbling away at it. Now switch to the other end of the curve and repeat the process. Keep alternating sides and work toward the middle until the curve is complete. If you need to smooth any ragged edges left behind, use an abrasive stone or rotary grinder. To cut notches with a wet saw, measure and mark the sides and the end of the notch. Using a wet saw, make a cut along one side of the notch. Rotate the tile, reset the fence, and make the second cut to form the notch. Stop each cut when the blade reaches the line marking the end of the notch. If the notch is wider than 1 inch, make a series of parallel cuts from the edge of the tile to the line marking the end of the notch. The cut should be about a 1/4 inch apart. To remove the notch, break off the individual slivers with nippers. To trim the remaining ragged edges, put the tile back in the saw. With the saw running and the blade just touching the end of the notch, slide the tile from side to side so the tip of the blade smooths the jagged edge. To cut round holes in tile, use a carbide grit hole saw attached to a drill. To prevent the bit from wandering on the tile's hard, slick glaze when you start cutting, break through the glaze with a center punch. Gently tap it with a hammer. This will give the bit enough grip to dig in and start the hole. With the tile positioned firmly on a piece of scrap plywood, put the saw's pilot bit on the tile. Start drilling slowly and exert very little pressure so you won't break the tile. Take your time. When you feel the drill bit reaching the back of the tile, slow down to ensure a clean exit.
Tiling is easy and enjoyable, but it also can be dangerous. By following a few simple precautions, you can prevent injuries. The first rule when working with tile is always to wear eye protection when you're cutting. Select glasses or goggles that shield your eyes and hug the side of your head. Flying debris is quite common when you're using tools, including tile nippers, which can unexpectedly send tiny slivers of sharp tile flying in all directions, power saws, including wet saws, circular saws, grout saws, and rotary cutters. In these cases, ear protection is also a good idea. If you're cutting lots of tile, a wet saw can help make the job easier. Here are a few tips to help keep you safe. Disconnect the saw whenever you're checking or changing blades. Regularly check the blade for damage. It should be flat with no cracks and no sections of the rim missing. A wet saw is great for curve cutting, but it also can be dangerous. Unlike normal cuts where the tile sits flat and firm on the saw table, hold the tile in your hands to make a curved cut. If the blade gets pinched in the kerf, the tile could be yanked out of your hands or parts of the cutting rim could break off. For stability, rest the heels of your hands on the saw table.